The morning air was cold enough to see your breath, but Derek didn't mind. He'd been looking forward to this hike all week. Work at the outdoor gear shop had been slow, giving him too much time to think about bills and responsibilities. But out here on the trail, none of that mattered. Just him, his camera, and the quiet forest. Derek had been hiking Pine Ridge Trail since he was a teenager. He knew every switchback, every rocky section, every spot where the morning sun broke through the trees just right. At 32, these Saturday morning hikes were more than just exercise. They were therapy, a chance to breathe, a chance to remember who he was outside of scanning inventory and restocking shelves. He adjusted the camera strap across his chest and started up the familiar path. The trailhead parking lot had been nearly empty when he arrived at 7 in the morning. Just his beat-up pickup truck and a fancy black SUV that looked like it cost more than he made in a year. Derek figured some weekend warrior was out trying to connect with nature for their Instagram feed. He'd seen plenty of those types before, usually gone by noon when the hiking got hard. The first mile was always the easiest, a gentle incline through pine trees, the smell of sap and earth mixing with the crisp autumn air. Derek fell into his rhythm, his boots finding the familiar pattern on the dirt path. He'd brought his good camera today, hoping to catch some shots of the elk that sometimes grazed in the meadow around mile marker 3. Wildlife photography was his real passion, even if it didn't pay the bills. Yet anyway, around the second mile the trail got steeper. This was where the casual hikers usually turned back. Derek picked up his pace, enjoying the burn in his legs the way his heart rate increased. This was the part he loved, the challenge. The reward of pushing himself. He was thinking about coffee, actually. About the thermos in his backpack and whether he should stop at the overlook or wait until he reached the summit. Completely ordinary thoughts on a completely ordinary Saturday morning. That's when he heard it. A voice. Faint at first, almost lost in the sound of wind through the trees, but then it came again, clearer this time. Hello? Is someone there? Please, I need help. Derek stopped dead in his tracks. His first thought was that he'd imagined it. People didn't usually need help on this trail. It wasn't technical enough to be dangerous, not like some of the mountain routes farther north. But there it was again. Definitely a woman's voice, and she definitely sounded distressed. He moved quickly, following the sound off the main trail. About 40 yards into the woods, past a cluster of large boulders, he found her. She was sitting on the ground, her back against a rock, one leg stretched out in front of her at an awkward angle. Even from a distance, Derek could see she was in pain. Her face was pale, and she was gripping her ankle with both hands. Hey, are you okay? Derek called out as he jogged over, immediately realizing how stupid the question was. Obviously, she wasn't okay. She looked up at him, and Derek noticed her eyes were wet with tears she was clearly trying to hold back. I think I broke my ankle, she said, her voice shaking. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I slipped on those rocks back there. Derek dropped to one knee beside her, slipping his backpack off. Don't apologize. Let me take a look, okay? I'm Derek, by the way. Elena, she managed, wincing as Derek gently examined her ankle without touching it yet. It was already swollen, pushing against the laces of her hiking boot. The boot itself looked brand new, barely a scuff on it. In fact, all her gear looked fresh out of the package. Expensive athletic leggings, a high-end jacket with the tag still attached at the collar, and a small designer backpack that probably cost more than Derek's tent. Okay, Elena, I'm going to need to take your boot off to see how bad this is. It's going to hurt, but leaving it on could make the swelling worse. She nodded, biting her lip. Derek worked as carefully as he could, unlacing the boot slowly. Elena gripped the rock behind her, her knuckles turning white, but she didn't cry out. Tough, Derek thought. When the boot finally came off, the damage was clear. Her ankle was already turning purple, swollen to nearly twice its normal size. Well, the good news is I don't think the bone is sticking out anywhere, Derek said, trying to sound reassuring. But you definitely need a hospital. Can you move your toes? Elena tried and managed a small wiggle. A little, that's good. Probably not broken, maybe just a bad sprain. But I'm not a doctor, so we need to get you checked out properly. Derek pulled his phone from his pocket, already knowing what he'd find. No signal. There never was on this part of the trail. No service. What about your phone? Elena reached for her expensive smartphone in her jacket pocket. Then her face fell. Dead. I forgot to charge it last night. Derek nodded, his mind already working through the options. The trail behind them wound 4 miles back to the parking lot. Ahead, the summit was another 2 miles, but there was a ranger station on the other side, about 6 miles total if they went that direction. Both options were terrible with an injured person. Okay, here's the situation, Derek said, sitting back on his heels. We're about 3 miles from the parking lot. That's our best bet. Can you walk at all? Elena tried to stand, using the rock for support. But the moment any weight hit her injured ankle, she cried out and nearly collapsed. Derek caught her, steadying her. Guess that's a no, she said, attempting a weak smile. Derek looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time. Mid to late 20s, probably. Athletic build, like she worked out regularly but maybe not outdoors. Her hands were soft when he'd helped her up. Not the calloused hands of someone who spent much time hiking. The watch on her wrist caught the light. Some designer brand he didn't recognize but could tell was expensive. You ever hiked this trail before? He asked. Elena shook her head, looking embarrassed. First time. First real hike, actually. I needed to get away from everything for a few hours. Looked up trails nearby, and this one seemed manageable. Guess I was wrong. Derek pulled his first aid kit from his backpack. It wasn't much. Just the basics every hiker should carry, but he had an elastic bandage and some pain relievers. Here, take these. He handed her 2 ibuprofen and his water bottle. It'll help with the swelling and the pain. While Elena swallowed the pills, Derek assessed the situation. She couldn't walk. He couldn't carry her 4 miles, not safely. But he could support her weight, let her lean on him. It would be slow, probably take 3 or 4 hours instead of the usual 90 minutes, but it was doable. All right, here's what we're going to do, Derek said, already fashioning a splint from some straight branches and his bandage. I'm going to stabilize this ankle as best I can. Then we're going to take it slow back to the parking lot. You lean on me. We'll take breaks whenever you need them. Sound good? I can't ask you to do that, Elena protested. That's going to take hours. Don't you have somewhere to be? Derek glanced at his watch. I had plans to photograph some elk and drink coffee on a mountain. I think they can wait. Besides, what kind of person would I be if I just left you here? Most people would call for help and wait. Can't call for help with no signal, Derek pointed out, carefully wrapping her ankle. And it's going to get cold once the sun moves. We're better off moving. The splint wasn't pretty, but it would keep her ankle stable. Derek packed up his gear, condensed both their backpacks into one to make it easier, and helped Elena to her feet again. This time, with him supporting almost all her weight on the injured side, she could manage a sort of hop step. Ready? Derek asked. As I'll ever be, Elena said. They started back down the trail. Progress was painfully slow. For every step Derek took, Elena could manage about half a step, leaning heavily against him. Within the first 100 yards, Derek could feel the strain in his shoulders and back. This was going to be a long morning, so, Derek said, trying to keep the mood light. What made you decide to go hiking today? Besides needing to get away from everything? Elena was quiet for a moment, focused on her footing. Honestly? I saw a picture online. One of those inspirational posts about finding yourself in nature or whatever. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Derek couldn't help but smile. And now? Now I'm thinking a spa day would have been smarter. They made it another 50 yards before Elena needed to rest. Derek helped her sit on a fallen log and took the opportunity to drink some water. The sun was climbing higher now, filtering through the trees in golden shafts. It would have been beautiful if they weren't in such a predicament. You do this a lot? Elena asked, gesturing vaguely at the trail. The hiking thing? Every weekend if I can, Derek said. Been coming to this trail for years. It's kind of my escape from the real world. What do you do? In the real world, I mean. I work at an outdoor equipment store in town. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Mostly. Derek pulled out his camera, checking to make sure it hadn't been damaged when he'd rushed to help Elena. This is what I really love, though. Wildlife photography. Elena's eyes lit up with interest. Can I see? Derek showed her some of the photos on his camera. Shots of deer at dawn, a fox kit playing in the meadow, and eagle mid-flight. Elena scrolled through them carefully, genuine appreciation on her face. These are incredible, she said softly. Like, really incredible. You could sell these. Derek shrugged, feeling self-conscious. I sell a few here and there. But it's not exactly a stable career, more of a hobby that occasionally pays for camera equipment. That's sad, Elena said, handing the camera back. You have real talent. Thanks, Derek said, meaning it. There was something about the way she said it that felt sincere, not just polite. Come on, we should keep moving. We've got a long way to go. They continued their slow journey down the mountain. Derek found himself enjoying the conversation, despite the circumstances. Elena was easy to talk to, funny in a self-deprecating way. She told him about moving to the city for work, about feeling disconnected from everything lately. She was careful about details, Derek noticed. Never mentioned what kind of work she did, where exactly she lived. But he didn't push. People were entitled to their privacy. An hour passed, then 2. Derek's shoulders were screaming in protest, but he didn't complain. Elena apologized every few minutes until Derek finally told her to stop. You didn't ask to get hurt, he said, and I'm choosing to help. That's what people do. Or what they should do anyway. Not everyone would, Elena said quietly. Then not everyone is decent, Derek replied. They took more frequent breaks as the morning wore on. Each time they stopped, Derek could see the pain and frustration building in Elena's expression. She wasn't used to being helpless, he could tell. Whatever she did for work, she was probably the type who was always in control, always capable. This had to be killing her pride as much as her ankle was killing her physically. Around the 3-hour mark, they rounded a bend and Derek could see the parking lot in the distance. Almost there, he encouraged. You're doing great. I don't feel great, Elena admitted. I feel like an idiot. Hey, accidents happen. At least you're in one piece. Well, mostly. Elena laughed, a real laugh that seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised Derek. You're being way too nice about this. I ruined your whole day. You didn't ruin anything, Derek said. Days don't go how we plan them. That's just life. Besides, I'm learning some new shoulder exercises I never knew existed. Finally, after nearly 4 hours of slow, painful progress, they reached the parking lot. The sun was high now and Derek was soaked with sweat despite the cool temperature. There were only 2 vehicles in the lot. His old pickup truck with the fading paint and rusted bumper, and that expensive black SUV he'd seen that morning. Please tell me the nice car is yours, Derek joked, already knowing the answer. The Mercedes, Elena confirmed, looking embarrassed. But I obviously can't drive right now. Derek helped her lean against the SUV while he caught his breath. Hospital time. My truck's not pretty, but it runs. Let me take you to get that ankle checked out properly. You've already done so much, Elena protested weakly. And I'm not stopping now when we're this close to the finish line, Derek said firmly. Come on, doctor's orders. Well, hiking guide's orders anyway. He helped her into his truck, apologizing for the clutter and the smell of old coffee. Elena didn't seem to care. She was exhausted, in pain, and Derek could see her fighting back tears of frustration and relief in equal measure. As Derek started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, headed for the nearest hospital 15 miles away, he glanced over at his unexpected passenger. She had her eyes closed, head resting against the window, completely trusting a stranger to take care of her. He had no idea that this morning, this random act of helping someone in need, was about to change everything in his carefully simple life. No idea at all. The drive to the hospital was quiet at first. Derek kept glancing over at Elena, making sure she was okay. Her face was still pale, and she kept her injured ankle elevated as best she could in the cramped cab of his truck. He'd turned the heat up, worried she might be going into shock, but she waved him off. I'm fine, she insisted, just embarrassed and sore. Really, really sore. Nothing to be embarrassed about, Derek said, navigating the winding mountain road carefully. Every bump made Elena wince, and he tried his best to avoid the worst potholes. Like I said, accidents happen. Not to me, Elena muttered almost to herself. Things don't just happen to me. I plan everything. Derek raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. There was something in her tone, a frustration that went deeper than just a twisted ankle. Like this was about more than falling on a hiking trail. They passed the Welcome to Pine Valley sign, and the road smoothed out as they entered town. Derek's truck rumbled past the familiar storefronts, the diner where he got breakfast most mornings, the hardware store, the outdoor equipment shop where he worked. Elena stared out the window, taking it all in. How long have you lived here? She asked. My whole life, Derek said. Born at the hospital we're heading to, actually. Grew up 2 streets over from Maine. Never really felt the need to leave. That sounds nice, Elena said, and there was something wistful in her voice. Staying in one place. Knowing where you belong. Derek wanted to ask what she meant, but they were pulling into the hospital parking lot. It was a small facility, Nothing like the big medical centers in the city, but it was clean and the staff was good. Derek had been here enough times with hiking injuries, both his own and helping others, that he knew his way around. He helped Elena out of the truck and into a wheelchair that a nurse brought out. The emergency room wasn't busy on a Saturday morning, just a kid with what looked like a skateboarding injury, and an elderly man waiting with his daughter. Name? The receptionist asked, barely looking up from her computer. Elena Hartwell, Elena said quietly. The receptionist's fingers froze on the keyboard. She looked up sharply, her eyes widening slightly. Elena Hartwell? As in Hartwell Industries? Elena's expression tightened. Yes, Derek noticed the shift immediately. The receptionist sat up straighter, her whole demeanor changing. Of course, Miss Hartwell, let me get someone right away. Please make yourself comfortable. She picked up the phone, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Within what felt like seconds, a doctor appeared. Not a resident or a PA, but an actual senior doctor, moving with purpose toward them. Ms. Hartwell, I'm Dr. Patterson. Let's get you into an exam room right away. Derek stood there, confused by the sudden flurry of activity. Elena looked mortified, refusing to meet his eyes as the nurse wheeled her toward the examination area. I'll just wait here, Derek called after her. Elena turned back, surprise evident on her face. You don't have to stay, really, you've done more than enough. I'll wait, Derek said firmly, already settling into one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs. As Elena disappeared through the double doors, Derek pulled out his phone. He felt weird about it, invasive even, but curiosity got the better of him. He typed Elena Hartwell into the search bar. The results loaded, and Derek's eyes widened. The first hit was a Forbes article from 6 months ago. The next generation of tech titans, Elena Hartwell takes the helm of innovation. There was a professional photo of Elena in a sleek business suit, looking nothing like the scared, injured woman he'd found on the trail. She was identified as the Vice President of Innovation at Hartwell Industries, daughter of founder and CEO Richard Hartwell. Derek kept scrolling. More articles, photos from charity galas, a TED Talk about the future of sustainable technology, Elena standing next to celebrities and politicians at a fundraising event. Her company's net worth was measured in billions, with a B. He set his phone down, feeling suddenly very aware of his muddy hiking pants and the hole in his jacket sleeve. The coffee stain on his shirt from earlier in the week, his truck in the parking lot that needed new brake pads and made a grinding sound when he turned left. Derek had just spent 4 hours essentially carrying a billionaire's daughter down a mountain. He laughed quietly to himself. No wonder she'd been vague about her work. In business was technically accurate, he supposed, like saying the ocean is kind of wet. About 45 minutes later, Elena emerged from the exam area on crutches, her ankle wrapped in a proper medical boot. She looked better, more color in her face, though she moved carefully. Derek stood up as she approached. Severe sprain, she announced. No break. 6 weeks in this boot, physical therapy, the whole deal. She paused, studying his face. You Googled me, it wasn't a question. Derek felt his face flush. Yeah, sorry. I was curious about the sudden VIP treatment. Elena sighed, lowering herself into the chair next to him. I was hoping to avoid that. The whole recognition thing, that's kind of why I went hiking in the middle of nowhere in the first place. To avoid being recognized. To avoid being Elena Hartwell, VP of Innovation, daughter of Richard Hartwell, etc., etc. She rubbed her eyes tiredly. Just wanted to be a regular person doing a regular thing. Look how that turned out. Derek sat back down, keeping a respectful distance between them. The class difference that had been invisible on the mountain now felt like a chasm. For what it's worth, on the trail you were just Elena, just someone who needed help. And now? Still just Elena, Derek said, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. Someone who needs a ride home, I'm guessing, since your car is still at the trailhead. Elena groaned. My car, I completely forgot. And my keys are probably still in my jacket pocket back in the exam room. She started to get up, but Derek waved her back down. I'll get them. You rest that ankle. He returned a minute later with her jacket and the car keys, which were indeed attached to a Mercedes key fob that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Elena took them, turning them over in her hands. I can't drive like this, she said. The boot is on my right foot. Where do you live? Derek asked, already knowing this was going to be complicated. The city. About an hour from here. Elena looked at him hopefully, then seemed to reconsider. But I can call a car service. Or my assistant. I shouldn't ask you to drive me all the way there. Your assistant doesn't know you're here, do they? Derek guessed. And if you call them, they'll tell your father, and then this whole peaceful Saturday hike becomes a major incident. Elena stared at him. How did you know that? You said you needed to get away from everything. I'm guessing everything includes well-meaning people who worry about you. Derek stood up, offering his hand to help her up. Come on, I'll drive you home. But we're taking your car because my truck might actually fall apart on the highway. You don't have to do this, Elena said, but she was already accepting his help to stand. I know, but I'm already this far in. Might as well see it through. The Mercedes was far nicer than any vehicle Derek had ever been in. The seats were leather. The dashboard looked like a spaceship control panel. And when he started the engine, it purred so quietly he wasn't sure it was actually running. Elena gave him her address, and Derek plugged it into the GPS, trying not to be intimidated by the technology. They drove in silence for the first few minutes, Derek getting used to how smoothly the car handled. It was like driving a cloud compared to his truck. Can I ask you something? Elena said finally. Sure. Why did you stay? At the hospital, I mean. Most people would have dropped me off and left. Derek considered the question. Honestly? I don't know. Felt wrong to just leave you there alone, even if you are a VP of a billion-dollar company. Especially because I'm a VP of a billion-dollar company? No, Derek said seriously. That part doesn't really matter. You were hurt and alone. That's what mattered. Elena was quiet for a long moment. People don't usually see me that way, as someone who can be alone or need help. They see the company, the money, the last name. That sounds lonely, Derek observed. It is, Elena admitted softly. More than you'd think. They talked more easily after that. Elena asked about Derek's photography. Really asked, wanting to know what drew him to it, what his favorite subjects were, whether he'd ever considered doing it full time. Derek found himself opening up in a way he rarely did, talking about his dreams and the practical realities that kept them just dreams. In turn, Elena talked about the pressure of living up to her father's legacy, of trying to prove herself in a company where everyone knew she got her position because of her name. She talked about board meetings and innovation labs and the weight of expectations that kept her up at night. Is that why you went hiking? Derek asked. To escape all that? There's a board presentation next week, Elena said. A big one. I'm supposed to unveil our new sustainability initiative, and I froze, couldn't think. Couldn't breathe, so I ran. Or tried to hike, I guess. Didn't even make it 3 miles before I proved how unprepared I was for that, too. You're being pretty hard on yourself, Derek pointed out. The trail was rocky. Anyone could have slipped. But most people would have been prepared. Would have had a charged phone, proper gear, maybe not gone alone on a trail they'd never hiked before. Elena shook her head. I made every rookie mistake in the book. And you know what? You survived. You're going to be fine. That's what matters. Derek glanced over at her. The presentation will still be there next week. You'll figure it out. How can you be so calm about everything? Elena asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Derek shrugged. I don't know. I guess when you spend enough time in nature, you learn that not everything is in your control. Sometimes you just have to adapt to what happens and keep moving forward. Like today. Neither of us planned for this, but here we are. They were entering the city now. The buildings growing taller, the traffic getting heavier. Derek followed the GPS through streets he'd only seen a few times before, into neighborhoods where even the sidewalks looked expensive. Elena's building was exactly what Derek expected, a luxury high-rise with a doorman and a fountain in the circular driveway. He pulled up to the entrance, feeling very out of place even in Elena's expensive car. The doorman rushed over, opening Elena's door. Miss Hartwell, are you all right? What happened to your foot? Hiking accident, Thomas. I'm fine. Elena grabbed her crutches from the back seat, maneuvering out of the car with practiced determination. Derek got out too, coming around to her side. He felt the doorman's eyes on him, assessing, probably wondering who this guy in muddy clothes was and why he was driving Miss Hartwell's car. Thank you, Elena said, turning to face Derek. For everything, for finding me, for getting me down the mountain, for staying at the hospital, for driving me home. I don't know how to properly thank you for all that. You don't need to thank me, Derek said. I'm just glad you're okay. Elena pulled a business card from her jacket pocket, holding it out to him. This has my direct number on it. Please call me. I want to do something to show my appreciation. Dinner at least, or, I don't know. Let me think of something appropriate. Derek took the card, feeling the expensive weight of it. Embossed letters, thick cardstock. You don't have to do that. I want to, Elena insisted. Please call me. Okay, Derek agreed, pocketing the card. I'll call. He watched as Thomas helped Elena toward the building entrance, her crutches clicking on the marble floor. She turned back once, waving. Derek waved back. Then he realized he was still holding her car keys. Ms. Hartwell, he called out. Your keys! Elena laughed, the sound carrying across the elegant driveway. Keep them! I can't drive anyway. Just bring the car back when you return to the trailhead for your truck. Consider it a loaner. I can't just take your Mercedes, Derek protested. Why not? It's just sitting here otherwise. Besides, now you have a reason to call me, to figure out when to return it. She smiled, a real smile that transformed her whole face. Call me, Derek, I mean it. Before he could argue further, she disappeared into the building. Derek stood there in the circular driveway, holding the keys to a car worth more than he made in 5 years, a business card with a VP's direct number in his pocket, and absolutely no idea what had just happened to his normal, simple life. The doorman cleared his throat. Sir, you can't park there. Right, sorry. Derek got back in the Mercedes, pulling away from the building, headed back toward the mountain and his abandoned truck. As he drove through the city, the absurdity of the situation started to sink in. This morning, he'd woken up planning to photograph elk and drink coffee on a mountain. Now he was driving a luxury SUV through downtown, having spent the day with a woman whose family probably had more money than everyone in his hometown combined. He pulled the business card out at a red light, looking at it again. Simple, elegant design. Elena Hartwell, Vice President of Innovation, Hartwell Industries. A phone number, an email address. Derek wasn't sure if he'd actually call. The day had been surreal enough without adding more complications. They lived in completely different worlds. She'd said thank you. He'd accepted. And that would probably be the end of it. That's what he told himself. Anyway, but as he merged onto the highway, headed back toward Pine Valley and his real life, Derek found himself hoping that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the end. That maybe the business card in his pocket wasn't just a polite gesture. The sun was starting to set as he reached the mountain, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. His truck sat alone in the parking lot, exactly where he'd left it that morning. A lifetime ago, it felt like now. Derek parked the Mercedes next to his truck, taking a moment to appreciate the contrast. Old and new, simple and luxurious. His life and hers. He locked the SUV carefully, pocketing the keys. He'd have to figure out how to get it back to her eventually, which meant he'd have to call. As Derek climbed into his truck, the familiar smell of old coffee and worn upholstery greeting him like an old friend, he smiled to himself. Yeah, he'd definitely call. 3 days passed before Derek worked up the nerve to call. He'd been staring at Elena's business card on and off since Saturday, propped up against the lamp on his nightstand. Every time he thought about dialing the number, something stopped him. What would he even say? Hey, remember me, the guy who helped you off a mountain? Just calling to arrange returning your extremely expensive car that's been sitting in my driveway making my neighbors ask questions. It sounded ridiculous in his head. Monday came and went. Derek went to work at the outdoor shop, helped customers find the right sleeping bags and hiking boots, restocked the clearance section. His coworker Tyler noticed the Mercedes parked outside Derek's apartment and wouldn't stop asking about it. Dude, did you rent that? Are you doing some kind of delivery gig now? It's a loaner, Derek said vaguely. Long story, Tuesday was more of the same. Except now the business card seemed to be staring at him accusingly. He'd promised to call. Elena had asked him to call. But the longer he waited, the weirder it felt. By Wednesday evening, Derek was sitting on his couch, camera in hand, scrolling through the photos he'd taken over the past few months. There were some good shots in there. A family of deer at sunrise, mist rolling through the valley. An owl he'd spotted on a rare night hike. He thought about what Elna had said, that he could sell these, that he had real talent. His phone sat next to him on the couch cushion. This is stupid, he muttered to himself. Just call her. Return the car. Say thanks for the opportunity to drive something nice for a few days. Done. He picked up the phone before he could talk himself out of it and dialed the number on the card. It rang 3 times. Derek was about to hang up, relieved that he'd at least tried when she answered. "This is Elena." Her voice was different than he remembered, more professional, clipped. He could hear background noise, voices, the sound of a busy office. "Hey, it's Derek. From the trail. I'm calling about your car." There was a pause, then her voice changed completely, warming. "Derek, I was starting to think you weren't going to call." "Yeah, sorry about that. I wasn't sure when would be a good time, and I figured you've been busy." "Busy is an understatement," Elena said, and he could hear the tiredness creeping into her voice. "Hold on 1 second." There was some muffled conversation, the sound of a door closing, then quiet. "Okay, sorry about that. You caught me in the middle of a meeting prep." "I can call back later," Derek offered quickly. "No, please don't. This is a good distraction, actually." She paused. "How have you been?" "How's the hiking?" "Good. Haven't been back to Pine Ridge yet, actually. Been busy with work and, well, trying to figure out the logistics of getting your car back to you." "About that," Elena said, and Derek could hear something shifting in her tone. "I have a proposal. Let me take you to dinner. As a proper thank you, you can drive the car to meet me, and then my driver can take it back while we eat. That way you're not stuck trying to coordinate getting it back on your own." Derek hesitated. "You really don't need to do that. I know I don't need to. I want to." There was a determination in her voice that reminded him of how she'd pushed through the pain on the hike down. "Please, Derek, let me do this. You saved me from spending the night on a mountain with a broken ankle. Dinner is literally the least I can do." "When were you thinking?" Derek asked, already knowing he was going to say yes. "Are you free Friday night? There's a restaurant downtown, Marcello's. Do you know it?" Derek definitely knew it. Everyone in the area knew Marcello's. It was the kind of place where you needed a reservation weeks in advance and the prices weren't even listed on the menu. He'd never been there, never even thought about going there. "I know it," he said carefully. "Perfect. 7 o'clock? I'll make a reservation." After they hung up, Derek sat staring at his phone for a solid 5 minutes. He had a dinner date. Well, not a date. A thank you dinner. With a billionaire's daughter, at the fanciest restaurant in the city. "What am I doing?" he asked his empty apartment. The apartment didn't answer, but his eyes fell on his closet, and he realized with growing horror that he had absolutely nothing appropriate to wear to a place like Marcello's. Thursday afternoon, Derek found himself doing something he rarely did, shopping for clothes. Not at the outdoor store where he worked and got a discount, but at an actual clothing store in the mall. He stood in front of a display of dress shirts, completely lost. "Can I help you find something?" A sales associate appeared at his elbow, young and eager. "I need something for a nice dinner," Derek said. "Like really nice, but not a full suit. Is that a thing?" The associate smiled. "Absolutely. We can do business casual. What's your budget?" Derek told him, and they spent the next hour putting together an outfit that wouldn't completely drain Derek's savings, but would at least make him look like he belonged in an upscale restaurant. Dark slacks, a blue button-down shirt, a blazer that the associate insisted elevated the whole look. Derek tried not to think about how much he was spending. When Friday finally arrived, Derek was a bundle of nerves. He showed up to work distracted, nearly sold a customer the wrong size tent, and kept checking his watch. Tyler noticed immediately. "All right, what's going on with you? You've been weird all week." "I have dinner plans," Derek admitted. "Dinner plans that require checking the time every 5 minutes? Must be some dinner, or some date." "It's not a date," Derek said quickly. "It's just a thank you thing." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "A thank you thing that you bought new clothes for?" "I saw the tags in the break room trash," Derek sighed. There was no point in hiding it. He told Tyler the abbreviated version: helping an injured hiker, discovering she was wealthy, getting invited to dinner. Wait, Tyler interrupted. "You're telling me you saved some rich girl on the mountain? She loaned you her Mercedes and now she's taking you to dinner?" "Dude, that's absolutely a date." "It's not," Derek insisted. "She's just being nice, grateful." "Sure," Tyler said, grinning. "Keep telling yourself that." By the time Derek's shift ended at 5, he was second-guessing everything. Maybe he should cancel. Text Elena and say something came up. This was too far outside his comfort zone. They lived in completely different worlds. What would they even talk about over dinner? But he didn't cancel. Instead, he went home, showered, changed into his new clothes, and stared at himself in the mirror. The outfit looked good, he had to admit. He looked like someone who might belong at a fancy restaurant. Almost. The drive to the city in Elena's Mercedes felt surreal. Derek was getting used to the car, which was somehow worse. He could feel himself starting to enjoy the smooth ride, the way other drivers treated him differently when he was in a luxury vehicle. That wasn't his world. He needed to remember that. Marcello's was in the heart of downtown, an elegant building with soft lighting and a valet stand out front. Derek's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he pulled up. A valet in a crisp uniform opened his door. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Marcello's." Derek handed over the keys, feeling like an imposter. Inside, the restaurant was exactly as intimidating as he'd imagined. Dark wood, white tablecloths, the quiet murmur of conversation and the subtle clink of expensive silverware. A hostess greeted him with a professional smile. "Do you have a reservation?" "I'm meeting someone." "Elena Hartwell?" The hostess's smile brightened considerably. "Of course, Ms. Hartwell is already here. Right this way." She led him through the restaurant, and Derek was acutely aware of the other diners, all dressed impeccably, all looking like they belonged here. Then he saw Elena. She was seated at a corner table, and she looked different than she had on the mountain or even at the hospital. Her hair was styled, she wore an elegant dark dress, and she looked every inch the successful executive. But when she saw him, her face lit up with a genuine smile that was pure Elena, the woman he'd helped down the mountain. "Derek, hi." She started to stand, then remembered her ankle and settled for a slight wave. He noticed she was still wearing the medical boot, though she'd clearly tried to make it work with her outfit. "Hey," Derek said, suddenly feeling awkward. "How's the ankle?" "Getting better. Still can't wear real shoes, but I'm managing." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Please sit." Derek sat, accepting a menu from the hovering waiter.
He opened it and immediately regretted it.
There were no prices, just as he'd heard. Just descriptions of dishes with ingredients he'd never heard of. "Have you been here before?" Elena asked. "First time," Derek admitted. "It's nice." "It's pretentious," Elena said with a small smile. "But the food actually is good, I promise. My father brings clients here all the time." A waiter appeared with water and began describing the evening's specials in elaborate detail. Derek nodded along, understanding about half of what was being said. When the waiter left, Elena leaned forward slightly. "You look uncomfortable. Is it that obvious?" "A little," she said gently. "I'm sorry. I didn't think about how this might feel. I just wanted to take you somewhere nice." "It's not your fault," Derek said. "I'm just not used to places like this. The fanciest restaurant I usually go to has paper napkins and a drive-through window." Elena laughed, a real laugh that made a few nearby diners glance over. "Honestly, those places are usually better. At least you know what you're eating." The tension broke and Derek felt himself relaxing slightly. They ordered, Elena guiding him toward dishes she knew were good, and once the waiter left again, the conversation began to flow more naturally. "So how was the presentation?" Derek asked. "The one you were stressed about?" Elena's expression shifted, a mix of pride and exhaustion. "I survived it. Actually, I did more than survive. It went really well. The board approved the sustainability initiative and we're moving forward with implementation next quarter." "That's great. Congratulations." "Thank you. It was terrifying, but I got through it." She paused, looking down at her water glass. "I kept thinking about what you said. About adapting to what happens and moving forward. It helped? I said that?" "On the drive back. You said not everything is in your control. You just have to adapt and keep moving." Elena met his eyes. "It sounds simple, but it's something I forget when I'm drowning in spreadsheets and quarterly projections." Their food arrived, beautifully plated dishes that looked almost too artistic to eat. Derek tried to remember which fork to use, watching Elena discreetly for cues. The food was incredible, he had to admit, even if the portions were smaller than he was used to. As they ate, they talked. Really talked. Elena asked about his photography, and Derek found himself telling her about a series he'd been working on, trying to capture the changing seasons in the same location. She asked to see the photos, and he pulled out his phone, showing her shots from his camera roll. "Derek, these are stunning," Elena said, scrolling slowly through the images. "Seriously, you have an incredible eye for composition. The way you captured the light in this one, you really think they're good? I think they're better than good. Have you ever shown these to a gallery?" Derek shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I wouldn't even know where to start with that. I might be able to help, Elena said carefully. I know people in the art community, not because I'm an expert or anything, but through fundraisers and events. I could make some introductions if you wanted. I couldn't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. She handed his phone back. Think about it at least? Derek nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The idea of his work in an actual gallery felt impossible, like a dream he'd given up on years ago. Can I ask you something? Elena said after a moment. And you can tell me if I'm being too nosy. Sure. Why did you stay in Pine Valley? You clearly have talent, ambition. The city isn't that far away. There are more opportunities there for photography, for everything, really. Derek considered the question, one he'd asked himself plenty of times. Pine Valley is home. It's simple, quiet. I know everyone. Everyone knows me. There's something comforting about that. And yeah, maybe I could make more money in the city, have more opportunities, but I'd also be miserable. I like my life. Most days, anyway. That's brave, Elena said softly. Brave? It's the opposite. It's safe. No, Elena insisted. It's brave to know what makes you happy and to choose it, even when the world tells you that you should want more. I think that's incredibly brave. Derek didn't know what to say to that. He'd never thought of his choices as brave. Practical, maybe, limited, but never brave. They talked for another hour, the restaurant slowly emptying around them. Elena told him about growing up with the Hartwell name, the pressure and the privilege intertwined. Derek talked about losing his parents young, being raised by his grandmother, learning to appreciate the simple things because that's all they could afford. I think that's why I like the outdoors so much, Derek admitted. It doesn't care who you are or what you have. The mountain doesn't judge you. Nature treats everyone the same. I'm starting to understand that, Elena said. Even if my first real hiking experience ended in disaster, it wasn't a complete disaster. You met me, didn't you? Derek grinned. That's true. And look at us now. Having dinner at Marcello's like civilized people. Speak for yourself. I'm still not sure I used the right fork for the salad. Elena laughed again, and Derek realized he really liked making her laugh. It transformed her whole face, made her look younger, lighter. When the check came, Elena didn't even let Derek see it. She handed her card to the waiter before Derek could protest. This was my thank you dinner, remember? She said firmly. You don't get to pay. Outside, Elena's driver was waiting with her car. Derek had driven the Mercedes there, but Elena insisted he didn't need to drive it back. Keep it another few days, she said as they stood by the valet station. Seriously, I can't drive it anyway with this ankle, and my driver usually takes me anywhere I need to go. Elena, I can't keep borrowing your car. People are starting to ask questions. Let them ask, she said with a shrug. Or better yet, tell them the truth. You helped someone who needed it, and now you have a friend who happens to have an extra car sitting around. Is that what we are? Derek asked. Friends? Elena smiled. I'd like to think so. Unless you're sick of me already. Not even close, Derek said honestly. Good. Because I was thinking, if you're free next weekend, maybe you could teach me how to hike properly, before I try another trail and actually break something. You want to go hiking? With your ankle still healing? Not the hard trails, Elena said quickly. Something easy. Something that a complete beginner with a medical boot can handle. And this time I'll have a fully charged phone, proper gear, and an experienced guide who won't let me do anything stupid. Derek found himself smiling. Yeah, I think I can arrange that. They said goodnight, and Derek watched Elena's driver help her into the car. She waved through the window as they pulled away. And Derek stood there for a moment, processing everything. He'd gone to dinner thinking it was a polite thank you, a way to close the chapter on their chance meeting. Instead, it felt like something was just beginning. Tyler had been right. Maybe it was a date after all, or at least the start of something neither of them had expected. Derek walked to where he'd parked his truck, which he'd driven separately just in case. As he unlocked it, his phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Thank you for tonight. I haven't enjoyed myself this much in months. See you next weekend? I promise to be a better student than I was a solo hiker. Derek typed back, looking forward to it. And bring layers. It's going to be cold in the mornings now. As he drove home, Derek couldn't stop smiling. His simple life was getting decidedly more complicated. And for the first time in a long time, he was okay with that. The next Saturday morning, Derek arrived at the easy trailhead near Willow Creek with his backpack, camera, and a thermos of hot coffee. He was early, which gave him time to second-guess this whole arrangement. Teaching Elena to hike felt different than their dinner, more personal somehow. This was his world, the place where he felt most himself, and he was inviting her into it. A familiar black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot right on time. Elena emerged from the driver's side, and Derek noticed immediately that she wasn't wearing the medical boot anymore. "Doctor cleared me yesterday," she announced, walking over with only a slight limp. "Said as long as I take it easy and don't do anything crazy, I'm good to go." She looked different again today. No designer clothes or business attire. She wore practical hiking pants, a fleece jacket, and brand new boots that actually looked like they'd been broken in a little. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried a proper hiking backpack. "You came prepared this time," Derek observed, impressed. "I did my research. Watched about 15 YouTube videos on hiking for beginners. Bought actual gear instead of just wearing expensive athletic clothes and hoping for the best." She held up her phone. "And look, fully charged. Plus a backup battery," Derek laughed. "That's definitely an improvement. You ready?" "Ready?" Elena confirmed, though he could see a hint of nervousness in her eyes. They started up the Willow Creek Trail, which was about as beginner-friendly as it got. Wide path, gentle incline, well-marked. Derek kept the pace slow, checking in with Elena every few minutes. "How's the ankle feeling?" "Good, actually. A little tight, but good." The morning was cool and clear, perfect hiking weather. Derek pointed out things as they walked. The type of trees they were passing, signs of deer activity. The call of a red-tailed hawk circling overhead. Elena listened intently, asking questions, genuinely interested. "You really love this, don't you?" she said after about half a mile. "Not just hiking, but all of it. The nature, the wildlife, everything." "Yeah, I do. It's the only place where everything makes sense to me. No complicated politics, no worrying about money or success. Just you and the mountain and whatever happens." Elena was quiet for a moment, navigating around a small rocky section. "I can see why. It's peaceful. My brain actually feels quiet for the first time in weeks." They hiked for another hour, stopping at a clearing that overlooked a small valley. Derek pulled out the thermos and 2 cups he'd brought, pouring coffee for both of them. They sat on a fallen log looking out at the view. "This is incredible," Elena said softly. "I can't believe this is only 30 minutes from the city and I never knew it existed." "Most people don't. They drive right past the turnoff without noticing." Derek sipped his coffee. "That's kind of what I like about it. It's here for whoever needs it, but you have to actually look for it." Elena turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" "About your photography?" "Sure. Have you thought about what I said? About letting me make some introductions?" "I wasn't just being polite, Derek. I really think your work deserves to be seen." Derek had been thinking about it. "A lot, actually. I don't know. It feels like charity or something. Like I'd be taking advantage of our friendship. It's not charity. It's using connections to open doors. Everyone does it. How do you think half the people in my company got their jobs?" Elena set her coffee down. "Look, I'm not going to force you. But I know the woman who runs the Riverside Gallery downtown. She owes me a favor. All I'd be doing is getting your foot in the door. After that, your work speaks for itself, and if she hates it, then she hates it and you're exactly where you are now. But what if she doesn't? What if she loves it and wants to feature you?" Derek thought about the photos on his camera, the ones he'd been taking for years with no real plan beyond his own satisfaction.